and welcome to my weekly conversation now with the fantastic Professor Priscilla Dunk-West. This week we talk about mid-career academics and how and why they are neglected and indeed forgotten. We use all sorts of words and phrases these days to explain or indeed justify why academics, say 10, 15 years into their career, leave the sector. We use words like churn and burnout. For me, these are band-aid words, and these words block us from really seeing what is going on. What's happening is we're getting easy answers to difficult questions, and indeed in our tough times, answers to questions that no one's really asking. So let's talk with Priscilla to get inside these difficult questions and also fathom some key, granular and useful answers. Oh, Priscilla, I'm really interested in what you have to say about this one. You've occupied an incredibly important point in leadership, in helping colleagues move through some very difficult periods of their career. So there is, I think, a lot of attention at the moment on early career researchers, and that's wonderful, and our early career researchers are so important. You know, that 5 years after a PhD can make or break a career. We all know that. But what foundations do you think we can create in those crucial 5 years to enable an easier pathway through that mid-career period?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been around for so long that I've seen that whole ECR thing be a thing and a named thing, which has been nice to see a kind of acknowledgement and naming of a period of time where you can have some additional supports or have a period of time that you can start to think about your career and plan for it in some ways. I am no expert on this because I'm completely somewhat random in my in my learning across and through academia in different contexts, and so yes, I think it's an important name to put to a period of time, but also don't feel freaked out, stressed, under pressure if you don't fit the expectation that you are a superstar in those early career years, right? So it's all is not lost. So I suppose that's important to say, because I think some people have been really fortunate in being mentored early on through their PhD and then hit the gates are open and hit their career in a very fast, clear, logical kind of manner. Other people haven't had those, may have done the PhD part-time, maybe meandering through, not sure what they want to do, unclear, those sorts of things. Yeah. So I think what needs to happen, I guess, in that period of time, is understanding what you might be interested in doing. And then what the landscape looks like. So what do universities look like? What's the structure of universities? What are the opportunities? What have other people done in your field? How is your field changing? Are universities going to be places that will support your field of study into the future? Are they interested in, graduates of your profession? Do you need to be thinking about, I hate to say agility, but do you need to be thinking about emerging areas that you could work across, or work in a multidisciplinary way, or work in different contexts? Does that make sense? So it's sort of understanding the landscape and then understanding yourself.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. So the first bit of advice is always, in that early career period, every drop you can get out of that PhD, get out of it. Every article, data mine, get everything out. Get a SOTL, Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, get a Scholarship of Supervision out, get that happening. But as you've rightly said, Joe, you've got to get that material out because it'll date. But then I love what you've said there. Look about you. What's emerging, what's changing, and start to build partnerships. Because I don't know if you agree with me on this, please disagree, but I think one of the challenges with everyone going, the PhD is so difficult, such a difficult period, is, of course, with a PhD, people actually care if you live or die. People, there is a supervisor who is paid to look after you. Then you submit the PhD, and then no one cares if you live or die. So actually things get a lot worse after the PhD. All the focus is on the PhD, but then you're sort of left into the wilderness to sort of wander without support. So building those connections and partnerships is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And the importance of mentors or role models or connections across disciplines, across, universities, across whatever, national borders and so on. And so the connections across are going to be potentially a scaffold that sits around the person who's done their PhD. And I didn't do those things. So I didn't publish a lot from my PhD. I didn't do the things that I was meant to have done. And often I think women or people with caring responsibilities can often find themselves not able to do the things that you're meant to do, in inverted commas. And so I think, yes, those things are really important, but also it's important to recognise that life can sometimes throw up other things, or you might be having to move or change institutions or take some casual work, and sometimes that's out of people's, control. So, yes, seeing it as a long, playing the long game, right? So, yes, those things are important, but you might have to do those down the track. That's okay.
Exactly right. And also, you don't know what you don't know. So I'm a big believer of avertness.
Yes.
So actually, a poor PhD student is released to the wilderness, and then 10 years later they come back and they've gone, I haven't published at all from this thesis.
Yes.
But again, it's not too late, as you've said. There are then ways to go, we've got a 10-year-old PhD, how do we make that into a book? And there are strategies to do that.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Now, we've often talked about, and you and I are a bit obsessed about this, we've never actually talked about you, but I'm happy to talk about myself, but we talk about the challenges of moving from a senior lecturer to an associate professor, right? This is such a difficult career transition, and it used to be, the real cusp. Women could get to senior lecturer and couldn't get to ASPRO, but now sort of everybody is trapped at a senior lecturer position. Why is that movement so difficult?
Oh, look, I mean, the call's coming from within the house, or whatever that, analogy to a horror movie is, where we put these expectations upon ourselves. And there is this sort of thing that the professoriate is a different kind of thing. But actually, there's a couple of things. Most people, I don't know if we've talked about this before, and I can't remember if this is still true, but I thought that most people, when they retire at senior lecturer.
Yeah, that's the normative pathway. That's right.
Yes. So you don't have to. It's not necessarily a progression or an improvement to be promoted. It doesn't mean that you're better than.
Boom.
Do you know what I mean? And so promotion isn't necessarily progress, I guess. And so you don't, it's this idea of, constantly getting better, or, evolving into something better. And I'm using air quotes. Yeah. And so that's okay. But yes, it is. It is a jump, but we also tell each other that it's a jump, which reinforces that it's a jump, which then flows through to promotions committees and, people hiring. So I think it's an expectation of seniority in some way, and esteem that's associated with the professoriate. So it is jumping from, that in Australia. But yes, it is also okay not to want that, I guess. And I'm thinking about, Australia in the context of the UK or the US, where the term professor means
completely different things.
And in Australia, I think you're right. I think I hear it all the time. People say, and I've said it, oh yeah, it's a really big jump from. But why do we keep saying that? Why do we keep doing that? Is it about time, the time that you've spent in a job? Is it about measures of esteem? Is it about publication record? Is it about, how much in grants you can get? It's all tied up with the esteem of academia and the very, very deeply ingrained notion that it's hierarchical. It's a hierarchy.
And what if I also say to you, and I've been dealing with a lot of my younger colleagues and great friends on this, I've been saying, and again, maybe I'm wrong, the old goth, the pyramidal career is over. And maybe it never existed. It was this thing that sort of hovered around us, that we just climbed the pyramid. And that's, of course, heteronormative, masculine, colonising, all the stuff that's a real problem was invested in that pyramidal career, right? And, is the goal, at the top of the pyramid, is the goal to be a vice-chancellor? Is that the goal? And I think you've rightly said, team, that normative shape is not meaningful. Who are you? What's important to you? What are your values? And sit in that.
Exactly. And what do you enjoy? What do you like doing? Try doing this, and do you like that? Do you like leadership? Do you like teaching? Do you like research? Do what you like doing and find a way that works for you without necessarily having to. It doesn't mean that you're not aiming for promotion if that's what you want to do, but it's the opposite of that, where people say, well, they're only a whatever, or don't ever feel less than. It's understanding the power relations that are embedded into that hierarchy and the way that that's then used to make people feel less than.
Oh, I think that's powerful. And look, I'll state for the podcast too, I had to fight really hard to get from senior lecturer to associate professor, really hard. And, I had books and the National Teaching Award and everything, and I had to fight. I got it on appeal.
Wow.
I had to appeal the promotion because, in my case, I was at that stage high humanities, and the promotion committee was filled with experimental scientists who saw books and did not know what to do with them. So I just want to know, for all the people out there that are really fighting, and this is what you want, if you're going to fight, you're going to have to fight, fight the power, fight the system. And if it's what you want, keep moving in that direction. But I think Priscilla's commentary is transformative for all of us there. That's really significant, I think. But going into this complicated mid-career period, what can go wrong? Now, obviously, there are multiple responsibilities, but do you think we are right now holding incredibly ambiguous metrics and standards and expectations for colleagues in mid-career? And of course, you only talk about mid-career if you know where it's going to end. So is it just sort of this classic Homi Baba third space that we don't know what's going on there and it's just chaos?
I think the problem is that the rules change. So this is why you've got to know what you like and know yourself and have a narrative of yourself in that professional context kind of way.
Wow.
Because the rules change, right? Is the university that you're in saying publish, doesn't matter, like it's the number of publications is really important. Now that may be true for your discipline or it may be true for your institution, but that's going to be different across institutions and across disciplines as well as across time. So the goals that you set now may not be adhering to the rules of the future. And so all you need is a change in policy around university funding or judgments of what research excellence looks like, for example, and all of a sudden you're playing against different rules. And that's really tricky because it does change across time. So I think in some ways, knowing that you're playing your own game and being true to yourself and true to what you enjoy doing and what you're good at and what you can give and what gives you meaning is really important in this context. So I guess what it would look like to me if it was going wrong is if somebody was doing all of the things that they were told to do, thinking that would bring them something that it might not, and doing things that would maybe be at odds with what they're actually really interested in doing.
I think that's so powerful because the research metrics change. I mean, in our career, we remember the Herdic points. It was, you've got to get a certain number of Herdic points. And so if you had a singly authored article, that was 1 point. If you had a book, it was 5 points. And of course, it impacted on medical science dreadfully because they had 10 authors on an article, so they'd get a tenth of a Herdic point. Now, of course, because that probably didn't suit the scientists, that disappeared about 2008, I think. And then the ERA emerged with its own metrics. And that has now gone. So I think Priscilla's advice is great there. If you work with the vagaries of research policy, you're going to be disappointed and stuff's going to change. At a certain point, there's got to be a central integrity there, which leads to my final question. And that's, what would you recommend to our colleagues around the world who are in that sort of senior lectureship role or, holding on to an associate or an assistant professor role in the UK at the moment? What initiatives can make a real difference if they want to progress, be promoted? What would you advise them to do?
I think it's, again, making connections both within your discipline area but across discipline areas. I think increasingly, in academia, we're interested in interdisciplinarity.
Yes.
And that can be important. And it also, I think, talking to other people from different areas helps you understand the rules of what you're operating within and how ridiculous they might be or how different they are. And then you sort of have more perspective. So I think connecting across disciplines to other people, but also making connections with others, and doing that by either emailing people or going to conferences or reading people's work and then making contact with them. I think those sorts of things are important. I don't think for me, it's not something you can do alone. You've got to find your people somehow across, whether it's across the other side of the world or it's across the courtyard from where you're sitting. So I think don't do it alone, connect with others. I think celebrate your success. So, think about what you're good at, what you enjoy, and make a story about that, that draws from your scholarly work. So that could be your teaching, your approach to teaching. Make a story about that for yourself so that then when you're introducing yourself to other people, you can have a clear way of sort of situating yourself within, your discipline or your area, and then, have that narrative of yourself, if you like, even if it's a narrative that you tell yourself, but that will change over time. I'm interested in researching this, or I'm interested in teaching this, or the thing that I really like is this. So really thinking about it from a narrative kind of perspective, because that will change over time.
Look, narrativizing the self. I mean, the recent failure book that's come out, I talk about working through and configuring these different narratives, the personal, the professional, the academic, the public intellectual. And as Priscilla's talked about so brilliantly, and of course we're doing here, nitro development can be a way to scaffold those narratives as well. So it centres you, and so you don't end up endlessly being the guest star in somebody else's life, which I think is the nature of being the mid-career researchers. You start to be the second author of 3 and the third author of 5. And if you can do what Priscilla said and centre yourself, what is your story? And then find strategies to communicate that to others, then you succeed on your own terms. And probably that's the best advice we could offer anybody, I reckon.
Hope so.
Thank you, my darling. You're a legend.
Thank you.